Video games have become the most lucrative entertainment industry in the world. Playing them gives us a sense of achievement, but to some, making them is even more gratifying. But in the flatlands of Canada where farmers reign, is it possible to become and succeed as a game developer? Here in Saskatchewan, we are not known for our booming gaming industry. What we are known for is our warm, welcoming community of good people. So I am beginning my search to meet the game developers of Saskatchewan and make some friends. First, I'm going to talk with Liam Iverson, the creator of The Cabin, that he created without a game engine using less than 200 lines of code.
Hey, what's up? How's it going? Fundamentally, I think the best part about being a game designer is if you're somebody that's interested in either creating a world or telling a story or even exploring an idea, it's a diverse medium in terms of content. Like everybody can make games for kind of whatever niche they want to, and there's usually people out there that are interested to participate in it, and it's very non-judgmental. I mean, obviously people that talk your games, it sucks. But if you're very genuine with people and you don't oversell it or you don't lie to people in the gaming community are usually pretty forgiving. It just lets you do that however you want to, and you have complete creative freedom to kind of do whatever you want.
Next, I'm speaking with Laura from Willie Steed Studios. She's been making games for 15 years inside of Saskatchewan and is currently working on a card game called Deck of Many Dungeons.
I'm a programmer by profession, but I do the design. I almost do every part of it. I do sort of work programming into almost everything I do. I have an older brother, about 6 years older than me, who got me interested in it. He just got me started and said, hey, this is a cool thing you can do. This is where the documentation is, go. And I had to learn most of it myself, and I've learned to do the wrong way at first. When it first came time to sort of decide what I was going to do as a career, I wanted to go to university. It was either writing or programming, I thought, and programming seemed to be a little more solid. So I went that route, and it's always been games.
Another game developer based in Saskatchewan is Michael Long, who is working with the company Foolish Mortals and is working hard on his upcoming game, Kaiju Wars.
I do basically a bit of everything. Programming is my main trade. However, as an indie developer with my own company, I kind of have to do everything. Basically, I have to wear 100 different hats. But mostly I try to do programming, and I do try to pawn off the other stuff as I can. I pay other people to do some other things. Third year university, I took the games course there, where you get to make a game over a term. And that's what really got me interested. I then started participating in all the game jams, and I basically won every single one, which is cool. And I was like, hey, making games is pretty nifty. But it was only after my master's degree that I decided to work full-time. I've been working full-time for about 2 years now. What started was I started working on Radio General during my master's degree. I worked 1.5 years, just part-time, unpaid on it. But then I applied to some government grants and actually got them. And after receiving those, after my degree, I said, okay, the government's willing to pay me money. I can actually work on this full-time for a year. And now that game sold pretty well, I'm good to go for a bit.
Next, I get to speak with the lead developer of Virtus Studios, Evan Geisler, who is working hard on a third-person co-op action game called Ember Vein.
I'm the lead programmer on our team. I also help with a lot of the technical design. I took software systems engineering in school, and in your last year, you do a capstone project, which is across 2 terms. I chose to create a game for it. So that was kind of like my first big undertaking of actually creating a game. I tried it a little bit before, but wasn't very successful. I was like 4 or 5, and we got like a Nintendo 64 for Christmas, and I was just like in love with the idea of games. Fascinated me, and always wanted to like get out of bounds and find secret things, and I was just like hooked on that. Partway through university, I was kind of really thinking about actually creating them myself, and then for my final project, I was like, you know what, why not try creating a game? It was a lot of work, but I really enjoyed it.
Jay Cameron is the next game developer that I get to meet. He is the owner and operator of Dragonfly Games. He and his team are working to make a beautiful horror game called Beyond the Oaks.
I do pretty much everything, and then for time restraint, I hire out a lot of different stuff, and then I just kind of put it all, package it all together, and and make it all work. When I was in high school, we had it was like an arts class it was in grade 9, it was first semester, and it was an art class that kind of split up doing like physical art, drawing, painting, and virtual art. So, Photoshop and stuff like that. And in that second half of the semester, I could use this thing called Game Maker. And I just started making games in that class, and I took the program home, and I kind of just never turned back. And now I just want to kind of use games as like a medium to tell stories and to make art. I like the art side and like the story and that kind of stuff most.
If you think musicians can't be game developers, think again. Justin Bender from the band Third Ion used his music in his mobile game, 0 Hour.
I always liked doing creative things. I've always liked, as soon as I started playing guitar, I just felt like I had to write my own songs right away. And I get pretty into my hobbies, and then I just have a habit of going to the full extent of them. I remember being like maybe 11 or 12 or something and interested in coding, and my dad got me some books on Turbo Pascal. The best part is just simply the creative expression. I consider it really to be the ultimate creative form. You have aspects of animation and art and music, sound effects, and then programming and design and problem solving and all of these things that have to work together, or it's not going to be a very fun game. So it feels like it's the most ultimate creative joy.
Now I get to meet with Ephraim Bilson, who is a contracted programmer that is currently working for an American game studio.
I work the full bill. So for some games, I'm the sound designer. For some games, I'm a graphic artist. It's whatever they need. At my main job, I work as a senior programmer at Rock Zone Studio. That's in a New York American game dev that does horror games. When I first started programming, I was 5 years old. My dad was into making websites at the time, so I learned websites, but I wanted to do more. As a child, I'm I want things to move when I press them and stuff like that. So I started researching, how do I make a game? Because I figured if I could make a game, I could learn how to make any kind of software. And that's how I started learning game dev, kind of as an indirect way into learning how to make computer software in general. And it just kind of never left my life. The most rewarding thing about game dev is probably the end result. Working, especially as a programmer, it really feels like a marathon when you're working on a game. But when you write everything and then people play your game at the end of it all, and it's wow, this is so awesome. You kind of sit back, and that's the real reward for us.
Everyone I've spoken to so far is based in Saskatchewan and has lived most of their life in Saskatchewan. Now, I have the privilege to speak with someone who actually came from Brazil and moved to Saskatchewan to be a game designer here, and he goes by the name Guy.
I'm more on the design aspect of things, so game mechanics, level design, character design. In the case of the project we're doing, it's a racing game, so the design of the vehicles and how they interact and the mechanics. That's mostly what I do. I try to think of how the game will come together, think about balancing, think about mechanics, usability, and all those things. I always spend the holidays and summers at my uncle's house, and he had a video game. It's kind of like the predecessor of the Atari. It had built-in games that you can change with a knob, and then you have games like Pong and things like that. So I grew up playing video games. I always enjoyed them, especially playing with other people. It was the kind of thing that I'm player 1, I'm player 2, and I always enjoyed that. And then when I was about 10 years old, I figured out that there was such a thing as tabletop RPGs. So I could even play games with friends without being in front of a computer. And I could make my own games, in a sense. You create your own adventure. And I think part of that encouraged me to try to create games and experiences and adventures in other mediums. I always try to translate interesting ideas, things that I find that I would have fun playing and maybe other people would have fun playing as well. So I believe that's what got me into, digital game design, so to speak. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a racing game, it can be a strategy game, it can be a JRPG, or it can be whatever. If it makes sense as a whole, if it's well crafted, and if I can forget about reality while I'm playing, those are some of the elements I really enjoy, and I try to translate into the games that I try making.
I've met some very inspiring and diverse game developers here in Saskatchewan. With all of their talent and unique skill sets, I am left to wonder, why are game developers making their careers in Saskatchewan?
Well, I love Regina. Like, I don't know, Saskatchewan's just different. Anybody that lives in Saskatchewan knows that, like, kind of a small town feel to it, and just, I have a lot of things that I like to do here. Like, I'm involved with the community here, and I'd like to keep that. I'm also hoping to get my professional engineer, and I feel like Saskatchewan's probably a pretty good place to get that. So yeah, just the love of the province and family and just personal commitments realistically is the biggest thing. Sadly, there isn't a lot for game dev going on here other than just like a lot of like little indie stuff. There isn't, any huge companies, which is quite disappointing.
Unfortunately, the provincial government is far behind the times. Last year, they were offering an experimental game development grant, but so far they haven't renewed it this year. The past 10 years before that, they didn't have one. They were leagues behind Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia, where they have very strong game development communities because their provincial governments give them lots of money to do it. However, luckily, you still can apply to federal grants. There's the Canada Media Fund. That can, of course, you can be anywhere in the country and apply to that stuff. So that's what I got. Sadly, it seems our province doesn't seem to care that much about game development, even though it far eclipses the film and TV industry. And they're willing to give grants to those guys, but not to game development.
Being a game developer in Saskatchewan presents its own unique challenges. No one wants to face these alone. I wanted to know if there was a community out there that was available to Saskatchewan game developers, where we could all come together and help each other out.
I would highly recommend joining Sask Game Dev.
Sask Game Dev.
Sask Game Dev.
The Saskatchewan Game Developers.
Sask Game Dev.
The community that everyone kept mentioning was Sask Game Dev, and I wanted to learn more about that. While doing so, I was able to meet with the man behind Sask Game Dev. His name?
Kai Hutchins, CEO of Massive Corporation Game Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan. I spent 10 years in Ontario as part of the game industry there. After finding success there, it was finally time to come home and try and build the industry in Saskatchewan so that future generations wouldn't have to leave Saskatchewan to pursue their game development dreams. I decided I wanted to be a game developer when I was probably about 8 or so, when my dad bought me my first Nintendo Entertainment System. It was just mind-blowing, and loved it so much. And I realized, you had to buy this, somebody had to sell it, somebody had to make it. I could be the person that makes it. I've always liked describing what being a game developer is like, in that I get to make universes and bring them to life. What other job can possibly compare to that? The biggest problem is that individual studios, if they don't have funding, they can't offer jobs. And if nobody's paying the rent, you can't stick around. Our biggest concern is not having the experience needed to do large-scale commercial products is going to be a challenge. Getting people to understand the market, to have successful products, is the other big part of it. We can always reach outside of the province too to support those needs. So, I wanted to see that the game industry could happen here. People want this industry, they want the opportunities. So it's going to be a rough 5 years where we develop that talent pool to get the experience. But I know people want it, and we'll fight that fight.
Even with a developing game dev community, the challenges game developers face in Saskatchewan are tough. So why stay here? Why did these game developers stay here, and was it worth it?
Saskatchewan doesn't have that weight of industry here, it doesn't have the history with the industry here, so there's a lot of downsides that people focus on, but there are upsides to it. One of the nice things is we're getting to build the culture. We're building this industry from the ground up, starting fresh, so we don't have to build the same industry that we have elsewhere. We can do our own things with it. We can build our own view and vision and style and community. Now is the time for the industry to be here. Previously, when you needed very advanced technical skills to make a game, when you had to produce them on actual physical discs and stamp them out and put them in boxes and ship them places. Very challenging to try and do that in a remote location. But now that it's all online, I mean, there's no reason we can't have a game industry in Saskatchewan. So now is the time to do it.
There is no advantage to be in Toronto, Montreal outside of the talent pool. And realistically, with LinkedIn, you can find everybody that you'll ever need around you, and you can move them to the city if you have to move people for talent. Once you weigh the pros and cons, all you're also doing by going to these larger cities is making yourself less unique. There's a million people in Toronto that want to make indie video games, and a million people in Montreal who want to do this. And all you're doing by moving there is entering a large talent pool, accruing debt, trying to find a company that's willing to hire you. By the time they do hire you, you're probably a junior developer that doesn't make much money anyway. And you're 3 years down the line, paying half your paycheck for rent. They have this misunderstanding that they have to move to some big city to be a game developer when all the tools can be completely utilized in a basement in anywhere. They don't need to be in a big city anymore. And if you need content from people, you can get it over the internet now. There's no reason that Saskatchewan can't be a game dev hub. It's a matter of effort.
The community is actually really good. Again, one of the nice things about Regina is there's a lot of word of mouth. There's a lot of just people knowing each other. Businesses really take off because of word of mouth. People help each other. They just know each other. It's like, oh, that local business. Oh yeah, I know the owners. Like they're great people. And I feel like that's the same thing with game dev. Like a lot of people know each other in some regard. And I think that's the biggest perk, is just this little local community that we have.
Yeah, I think the best part is that there's nobody here, which means that if we go, let's say you go ahead and you start as a student and you're successful, you can be the Ubisoft of Saskatchewan and really establish yourself because you don't have anyone else to compete with just yet. It's nice in that where you're physically located doesn't matter as much for anything other than the legal stuff, because your customer base is still the whole planet, right? You uploaded a game to Steam and it doesn't matter where you live, anyone can download it. I actually like the business environment that we have going on in Saskatchewan. So if you wanted to start even a non-game organization, it's really easy to do right now in Saskatchewan. I'm looking forward to doing that here because there's a lot more opportunities in here than I would find if I were to go back to Toronto. It would be definitely a lot more work.
Saskatchewan is not booming with big video game companies yet, but that just gives us more room to succeed here. There are so many resources online and in the game development community to become a game developer anywhere. So living here in the beautiful prairies of Saskatchewan might just be the perfect place for up-and-coming game devs. We have a long way to go to make Saskatchewan the happening place for game developers, so if you're interested in game development, you can help make history here in Saskatchewan. It won't be easy, we promise, but there is a place for game developers here. A kind, welcoming, and inspired place.
If you want to be an indie developer, my recommendation is to teach yourself a game creation tool like Unity, Game Maker, RPG, something straightforward and easy. You have to have a wide palette of skills, because if you can do a little bit of everything, if you're at least palatable at all those skills, the most you might have to do is pay somebody to consult or get somebody to help you with a particular problem, and that really will reduce your budget. It doesn't matter how simple your game is, you will underestimate how much work you have to get done. But if you legitimately are interested and you have the effort and the gumption to do it, you can make a lot of money and you can have a lot of fun doing it regardless. Just treat it like an art project. Build a game that's unique and has a personal flavor to it, and tell people exactly what you're going to build, and that will set you apart.
It's really important to understand you can't please everyone. You have to have a solid core idea. Every game should have a unique aspect, and it should have something that you really want to see exist. You have to make the game you want to make.
Try to guarantee success before you start. So try to get a grant, try to get money before you start, because it's a crazy risky business adventure. Spending 2 or 3 years on something with no guaranteed money return, that's really risky. Like most businesses don't take 2 or 3 years to start up before they start earning money. COVID is a good time to start working on games. Since you're stuck inside anyway, why not start working part-time on a game now? Video games are more popular than ever. All other industries took a hit by COVID. Video games actually saw increased engagement all across the board. There's never been a better time to start learning.
Practice. Get involved with the community. If you feel very discouraged, you'll feel like that. We all get that. We all get those days. Those days pass. Just keep going at it. Take a day or two off, and just keep pushing, keep learning, keep trying new things. If you fail at one thing, that's fine. Just learn from your mistakes. Keep going. You don't have to get perfect at one thing. You can learn a whole bunch of different things in your game dev, and just try to enjoy it as best you can.
Start now. Start while you're young, and focus on a specific part of game development that you want to explore, whether that's programming or art or inside of those, and then focus on that. Become strong at one part and then start branching out into other parts. It's a long road, but it's worth it. Just keep going. Make sure with whatever you're doing that you're building a community. Build a community based around what you want to see more in the world, and then show that through your games.
I would pass on advice that I got from industry people that I would hear on podcasts and stuff. I'd listen to a lot of game development podcasts, and I would hear this advice, and I didn't follow it, and I wish I did. And that would be to share your work early, share prototypes, share what you're working on. Start early building an audience on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is. I guess the younger generation might be better with TikTok or something. Even if your audience is really small, just ask what people think of an idea. Should I do it this way, A, B, or C? Just get feedback early. If you have a passion for games and a passion for being creative, I think just go for it. It's never too late to get into it.
The biggest piece of advice I could give anyone who's wanting to get into game dev is to start dreaming now. Especially on our end for programmers, it's definitely a marathon. It's a lot of work. You really need those dreams of places you want to get to, things you want to experience and share with people to really push you through tough times. And once you get through that, it's really an amazing experience. Got dreams, get some motivation, and then do it.
Don't quit your job to make games if you don't have an income on that. There's a time for everything in life. And if you want something and if you like doing those things, you can keep pursuing them until you feel like, okay, that's my job now, I make games. Or, okay, I do those things on my free time. Or, okay, I have this incredible chance to move to another city because there's an opening in a studio. But that will only happen if you keep pursuing those things. If you have the skill set, if you have a portfolio, if you have the contacts. If you keep waiting until the perfect opportunity, you're not going to know anyone, you're not going to have anything to show to anyone, and you're not going to have the skill set. So if you like it, just do it. Just start doing it right now.
If you are interested in gaming, get involved, maybe join up some local game jams. We're hoping to help make more events and opportunities occurring in the province, so keep your eyes open. If this is what you want to do, then do it. Get started. Just do some little tutorials, do some small projects. It doesn't matter how small they are. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, and just every step you can make, it's all progress, it all counts, and hopefully together we can travel far.